Warmly welcome back to Crime and Tension Techniques for Fantasy Writers. This time, we're going to have a look at mystery and plot twist, which is part 2 of this presentation in 4 parts. Part 2 is called Origin Mysteries and Other Plot Twists. And what we're going to look at is how to create deep mysteries and how to craft plot twists that creates interest in the world building and adds excitement and cohesion to your story. And to start off, just a spoiler alert, because it's really hard to give examples of how good twists are built without spoiling them. And just a little note on this, research show that even though you know what's going to happen in the story, like if you did get a spoiler, it actually doesn't take away readers' enjoyment of the story. So I hope you want to stick with me on this presentation, even though I'm going to talk about Harry Potter, first season of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Ring films, Princess Mononoke film, the first book of Mistborn, The Final Empire, Fourth Wing, the first book, and A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is also the first book. So this is not going to be about the typical murder mystery, although a murder mystery set in a fantasy world or a paranormal mystery is such a big topic that I might make a video on this on its own. But what we're going to talk about today is how to use mystery techniques in fantasy to explore deep themes and to create more excitement to your plot. So first, we're going to have a look at how to create depth and why the origin mystery in fantasy is the perfect vehicle to explore existential questions. And what I mean by origin mystery is going to get clear very soon. The other part is going to be about excitement, and then we're going to go more into the concepts of mystery and plot twists to have a look at how you can actually maximize the effect of a plot twist to add energy into the fantasy story's climax. So it starts off by what question you're actually posing to the reader. And whenever there's a murder mystery, the main question is usually how done it. And a lot of the times murder mysteries also have the how done it, which is more, you can show the intricacies of how something got done and then really show the ingenuity of the murderer and the ingenuity of the detective solving the case, which has an appeal on its own. And often it's also like a why done it. So you go into motive and the psychology of why somebody commits murder. And both of those questions are in itself more interesting than the who done it. And if you only have a who done it question and you don't have a story that actually adds something more into the story, it's as interesting as, where is the ball hidden? Who did it? And mystery can also be used to ask deeper questions. And this is where we can use origin stories. So fantasy often tells a story about how things came to be, and often how evil entered the world. So to break the curse over the world and overcome some kind of monstrous force, one must go to the root of the problem, which arose in a specific way at a certain time and place, and then return to this source. And you can see my example just so it's clear to anyone. What I'm talking about is the Lord of the Rings, where you have to cast a ring into the fire and destroy it in Mount Doom, where it was made. And the origin story does a lot of things. It grounds the character and the plot to a specific place, which can be in a fictional world or a place in our world if you're writing a urban fantasy. Also, it gives the story a specific flavor and visuals. And if you have a look at this picture, I'm sure you can just hear me saying 7 dwarf lords in their halls of stone. So you can really create these iconic visuals and moments to your story by having an origin story. And it also increases the scope because when you have an origin story that's tied to a world and a place, of course, the scope is the whole world or the whole place. And as you can see in this picture, this is the road that Frodo and Sam did from the Shire onto Mount Doom in Mordor. So this journey was very much like the main part of the plot, going from here to there. But instead of having the plot being an actual journey, you can make the origin into a mystery. And instead of returning to the physical location only, the plot makes the readers, makes the characters work to understand the mystery story and investigate it. So how to do this? I'm gonna use 2 examples. One is Princess Mononoke, a 1997 film by Studio Ghibli. And Prince Ashitaka, the protagonist of this movie, his problem and the mystery starts as he kills a monster to protect his village. And an interesting note here is that it doesn't end with killing the monster. The problem starts with him doing that. And as you can see in this picture, when he kills the monster, he gets maimed. His arm get these marks, and the wise woman tells him that they're going to spread over his body. And the only chance he has to stop this is to find the origin of this metal bullet that he finds inside the body of this monster. So he goes searching for that, and what he finds is that it started when this Lady Eboshi, she worked on making these weapons, and she used them to kill these giant animals that had the ability to speak. And so there's these animals that are like more magical. And when she kills this boar, the boar is filled with hatred. And what you can see is that the monstrosity just kind of grows out of him in the moment of death when he's attacked by this bullet. And the word monster is derived from Anglo-Norman monster, which means to show and to make aware of, which is also where the word demonstrate comes from. So then, in this story, what does the monster show? And Ashitaka, our protagonist, when he hears this story, his arm wants to kind of go on its own and kill her, and he's filled with rage hearing this story. But he manages to stop himself, and he says to everyone, "This is what hatred looks like." So instead of just going with kind of wanting to destroy this monster, he tries to understand it and make other people understand it as well. And the monster is a cultural, physical manifestation of a transgression. So crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed in a specific time and place. And the mystery here is what's the origin and significance of this bullet. And when he goes investigating, he finds the origin is that humans are eradicating animals who gets filled with hatred. And in a lesser story, the fast conclusion on this would be like humans are evil and deserve to die, which is like a reaction of rage and hatred, and also of depression, because if you're a human and you feel like we deserve to die, it's a very depressive feeling. But instead of going to this conclusion, Prince Ashitaka stops himself from the rage, and he understands that, and he says that he wants to see with eyes unclouded by hate, which is seeing the origin story, seeing the hate, and try to step away from that. So the origin story gives an understanding of what needs to be done. Then we have the mystery of the Deathly Hallows, which starts in the story with somebody seeing the symbol in a wedding and getting really upset and trying to start an argument based on this symbol, which shows from the get-go that this symbol is contested. It has several meanings for several people, and it's really old. And the next time, and one of the most significant times where it shows up in the story, is when Harry and Hermione goes to the grave and see it on a gravestone. And then also they see the same symbol in the storybook, The Tales of Beedle the Bard. And the origin story tells a story about three brothers and their different ways to relate to death by trying to destroy or humiliate death, or walk with death when time comes, as an equal. And this is also what Harry does when he has all the Hallows. He walks to his death, and in the moment where he's in between the worlds, and he talks to Dumbledore and meets him in this kind of heavenly space, and he says, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean that it's not real?" So it kind of opens up these worlds beyond that we don't know anything of. So going back to kind of the sequence of the mystery, the origin and significance of the Deathly Hallow symbol, it also has an origin story that gives an understanding to the protagonist of what needs to be done in the story and how to relate to the problem. And there's also a remaining mystery after the story question is solved, which is in the first story, Can Humans and Nature Learn to Live in Peace? So it's more suggested in the end that it might be possible, but we don't see if it actually is possible going forward. And also in the Harry Potter stories, what happens after death remains a mystery. And as I said, when starting this section, a lot of fantasy stories work with origin stories in adding something to the question, what's the origin of evil? And in many stories, it's a presence of something evil and acting on that. So hatred in Princess Mononoke, and in The Lord of the Rings, I would say it's greed for power. And you can see that in the story that the greed for power is how the different, like the 3 and the 7 and 9 rings were they were used to give more power, and then that became corrupted as the One Ring was made. So if people of the different races weren't so greedy for power, like there wouldn't be a way for Sauron to take advantage of this in the way that he did. And the origin of evil can also be, instead of a presence, it can be an absence of something good, or failing to act on it. And in the Harry Potter example, if we see the origin of Voldemort in Voldemort's life, we can see that in his mother's upbringing, instead of love, there were just abuse, verbal and physical abuse. In between his parents, instead of love, it was using a love potion, so forcing somebody against their will. And also when he was born, his mother didn't give him any love. She just delivered him to this orphan place, and died. So in 3 instances where there should be love, instead of love, you just see an absence of love. So to conclude, mystery can be an invitation to uncover and understand the root of the deeper problem in order to end the destruction and create positive change. Instead of just rushing in to kill the monster or kill the enemy and thus reiterate the cycles of violence and destruction. And if somebody is interested in more stories that use mystery in similar ways to explore existential questions, his Dark Materials is a great place to go. The question, what is dust, is really looking into the evolution of humankind and consciousness. And also Twin Peaks, the TV series, and The Return. The question of who killed Laura Palmer is not the usual murder mystery and will give a lot more. And further reading here would be Monster Culture, 7 Theses by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen. So now we talked about how to use mystery techniques in fantasy to explore deep themes. And let's move over to how to create excitement to your plot. So Deathly Hallows and Princess Mononoke, as we saw, they reveal origin stories in the middle of the story, which is a quieter place where characters can ponder the deeper questions that they pose. But also, crucial pieces of the origin story can be revealed in the end to just maximize the excitement of the climax. And to discuss that, let's start with a close look at mysteries and plot twists. A mystery is a question, explicit or implicit. And explicit would be like posing a question, and an implicit question would be like, if you find a dead body, you would wonder who killed them. And it's emphasized in the story in a way that makes the reader aware that there's a gap in knowledge, if you like. So a mystery evokes curiosity. And the typical sequence in a mystery novel would be the mystery creates interest. There's an investigation where interest is maintained, and the plot twist provides the satisfaction. And a little warning here, if your mystery looks more like this, it's really risky business. Maybe you want to have a story that just feels very mysterious and it's never solved. But I would argue that using an origin mystery is a better way of letting something deep and mysterious remain in the story instead of just promising a mystery and not delivering. But what about the other way of not having a mystery but have a plot twist? And I'm much more positive to this, and I will explain why. So first, as a side note, the plot twist in literature is older than the mystery genre. So this is one of the most beloved plot twists in mystery, in literature still, is in Pride and Prejudice with Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham, and who's the bad and who is the good guy. And Jane Austen wrote this 100 years before the golden age of mystery and several decades before the mystery was even a genre. And what is a plot twist? It is an unexpected turn in the plot. And a plot twist can be forward-looking, by which I mean something happens and then the energy goes forward. And the typical question would be, how will the characters and story deal with the consequences of this thing happening? So in these cases, you have an expected trajectory of future plot, which looks like this. And then you just have a shocking thing happening. And after that, the plots just need to take off in a different direction. And an example of this would be Ned Stark's death in Game of Thrones, and Feyre turning into a fae in the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And if you don't really know what you're doing, this is also risky business, because it's a big potential of losing readers unless the plot is better than expected. So Game of Thrones, obviously, they created something better, at least according to a lot of readers and watchers. But they also lost some of the readers with Ned Stark's death. But Game of Thrones is Game of Thrones. It created like a lot of like a whole subgenre almost of fantasy. So obviously it was super popular, but not everyone can deliver and make something that's so much greater than the original promise that the reader felt they were getting. And what happened in both of these stories is that at the end of the book or the season number 1, there is this big change where book or seasons 2 goes off in a different direction. So also Feyre turning into Fae makes book number 2 really be not about her grappling with her humanity, but trying to get into the society as High Fae. So there is a forward-looking like direction in this kind of plot twist, and the question would be like, how will the characters and the story deal with these consequences and in the next book or next season in these instances. There's also like a little bit of a backwards direction, because when this shocking thing happens, suddenly we kind of have to rearrange in our heads, like, what did we just read? Like, how do we understand what kind of story and theme this was actually about? Okay, it's not in Game of Thrones, it's not a heroic fantasy, it's something else. So we understand past things differently also a little bit. But mostly it's a forward-looking thing. And then we have the revelatory plot twists, which are mostly about understanding past events differently. The typical question and revelation would be like, who did it? And this, when it constructed well, it creates a feeling in the reader that many reader craves. It's a feeling of cohesion, of synthesis, when different parts of the story are, and the clues, and the way the story was constructed, you just feel that everything comes together in this moment. But the main direction would be backwards to understand what's happened differently. And in the typical murder mystery, you would also have like a small direction forward would justice be done and how, but that's a smaller thing than the revelation itself. And this is a reason, I think, why to many readers, and at least to me, if you've seen a lot of mysteries, the typical murder mystery, it's very easy to forget the twist in the end, because the story doesn't do anything more with that twist. The story is over, and then it doesn't impact anything later, and then it's very easy to forget it. So we have the revelatory plot twist looking backwards, the forward looking forwards. And I hope you are now asking the question, can you have both? And of course, my answer, will be yes, and I will show you how. So the revelatory plot twist looking backwards, they can have a mystery and an investigation going on before. And the typical thing then is that you need several red herrings. So if you have a whodunit, the reader is going to know like the first person who you think has done it has to be a red herring, and even the second one, and even the third one perhaps. So the plot line will follow these different red herrings until reaching the right one. And so for the construction of this kind of revelatory plot twist, you need several red herrings, and the story will be very focused on this. But you can also have a revelatory plot twist without investigation, or with very minor investigation. And then you can have another plot. It can be an action plot, a romance plot, as the main focus. And then you would have one established red herring, which is something taken for granted, which is revealed to be false at the twist moment. So going back to the typical sequence in a mystery novel, the mystery, investigation, and plot twist would be the promise, the progress, and the payoff of the plot. So you can then over-deliver on satisfaction by having another plot as the promise and the progress, and then at the end there's a plot twist that nobody saw coming, and a payoff on the other plot, which creates this double payoff in the end. And this is what Mistborn, Fourth Wing, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone does. And there's a lot going on in these stories. There's heist, there's romance, there's war school, there's a magic school, and the coming of age. But one thing they have in common is that it's an action plot, which means there's life and death stakes at a climax, and facing your enemy. And we do get glimpses of the origin story along the way, but the real surprise revealed right before the action climax is who's the actual enemy. and what magic do they have, so then how can they be defeated? And this realization, which create this feeling of cohesion, comes both for the protagonist and the reader right before the action plot's climax of fighting the villain in the final showdown. So this creates a lot of excitement and energy into the plot where it matters the most, and you really want to have your readers at the edge of their seats. So the protagonist isn't prepared and has to face the consequences immediately and improvise. And you can see in the picture Harry Potter, no, it can't be Snape. And then it's Quirrell, and yeah, he's just there. He needs to do something. And in a normal murder mystery, like if you really want a really smart detective, that person will, find out these things and then reveal them in a place where they're in charge of the situation. Think, Poirot, like lining up everyone in the library. But in the action plot, you want the antagonist to have to be in charge at the moment, and the protagonist to be the underdog. And this is exactly what also happens in Mistborn on the left and Fourth Wing on the right. You have a big revelation, and the protagonist is caught in a difficult situation, and they just have to handle their enemy and understanding their use of magic, and improvise something. And since they're not in charge of the situation, the stakes are really high and the odds are against them. So this is how you get a plot twist that's both revelatory and forward-looking. Revelatory in that you can you add clues that get this feeling of synthesis when it's revealed how the magic works and who's behind it. But you also have the forward-looking direction with the person having to defeat the villain. And the way this is done is usually something that also affects the plot going forward if this is a series. So you can then over-deliver on satisfaction by having this action plot as the promise, progress, and payoff with the plot twists. And two ways of doing this would be preparing a reveal secretly behind the scenes before the plot twist, so it comes completely out of nowhere. But you can also have a subplot mystery that goes on a little bit, posing a little bit of questions, but the focus on the plot wouldn't be to investigate this, but it's just coming like in small pieces here and there. And this is also a way where you can you hook your readers also earlier in the story, because in addition to maximize the excitement in the climax, if you mystify pieces of magic or other world building, for instance, the battle briefs in Fourth Wing, you can create interest in the world from the get-go and avoid these much dreaded info dumps. So two ways of planning a plot twist would be, for instance, in Fourth Wing, if you use the book architecture method by Stuart Horowitz. I will link this later, so you can read the book if you like. But there's different story threads going on. One is the battle brief, so you get just small glimpses here and there in different parts of the story. Another thread is Xaden's secrets. So he has secrets, and this is also developed here and there in the story. And another thread is folklore, that these Vanin creatures once was alive, but that's just a story. And And all these threads at the revelation, you see that they are connected. And so working with different threads and then connecting them in revelation is a very nice way of creating this synthesis and just a feeling that this story is really well planned. Another way of planning a plot twist would be to create something like a big assumption that everybody believes, like the red herring, and then build up this assumption while also having clues of how it's like the real state of things, but so small that the reader won't notice them. But in the revelatory plot twist, you see that the assumption is wrong. So then the big red herring is just thrown off, and the little clues planted along the way is lifted up. And this is another way to have a big reveal and to have this feeling that the reveal is very surprising, but it's also usually people say surprising yet inevitable, and that's the feeling that the reader wants to have. But it's more useful, Jane Thomas says, who has a lot of good mystery resources. She says a more useful way of looking at this is surprising yet supported, because as a writer you need to kind of plant something that supports your plot twists, so when it's revealed in the end it feels inevitable. So to summarize, plot twists can energize your fantasy through creating interest in the world building, maximize excitement and stakes right before the climax, and it can give feelings of cohesion as different parts of the story falls into place. And some further reading on this, on plot twists and information management in stories. Something that's very accessible is the YouTube videos by Jane Thomas. For instance, this one, A Step-by-Step Guide to Blindsiding Your Readers. And this is some of the best free resources you can find anywhere. If you want to have something that's longer and more in-depth, there's an article called Foregrounding, Burying, and Plot Construction, which is a scholarly analysis that looks at how Agatha Christie hides information. And this is great for storytelling nerds, gives very specific advice on how to hide information and things like that. And also book architecture. The way that I was analyzing Fourth Wing in the first example, I built on the methods from Blueprint Your Bestseller by Stuart Horwitz. And chapter 4 has a really good part on suspense, surprise, and shock. But the best thing is to read the thing in context. So now we have gone through how to use mystery techniques in fantasy, both to explore deep themes and to add more excitement to your plot. And this is a way to let the fantasy world and mysteries and twists be more than the sum of its parts. But another thing, if you want to make it more than the sum of its parts, is to really use the magic and the world in your mystery to create color, uniqueness. And to do that, you need to show your magic. So just as a last little thing to give away to you, these are 4 ways to show your magic and your mysteries and twists. So first off, you can use something magical as the murder weapon, or as weapon in the climax, as you see the sword sting that glows in blue when orcs are near. You can also use magical elements to build clues. So this is an illustration of Scabbers in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is a very memorable clue that it's an old rat who's missing a toe. You can also use magic to investigate, so have some kind of super senses, like for instance in the Tainted Cup or in the Witcher game. And you can let some mysteries or reveals be about the magic itself. And this is the way that the magic is used in, for instance, Mistborn. And I am Ina Nes, aka Magical Mystery Coach, a writer and book coach passionate about crime and fantasy. And if you're interested in the next 2 parts, which will be on heists and on thriller and tension in fantasy, you can fill in this form, or you can just use this QR code, and I'll get back to you on when it's going to be available. And if you're writing a fantasy or a supernatural mystery and want help, or if you just want to talk about fantasy and crime, which is lovely, you can contact me at inaingeborgnes@gmail.com. So thank you very much for staying with me, and I hope you are feeling excited to write a fantasy mystery.